All right, you guys, we are about to start the final step of our mandala painting, and that is going to be painting in our tones for our tertiary colors. Today, when you paint in your tertiary tones, we're going to be painting them in as gradients on wet paper. So that means that you're going to have to wet the paper first with your brush and then paint your tones in onto the wet area. The mixing is going to take a little bit more because you'll notice the opposite of a tertiary color is another tertiary color. So it's going to take us a little bit longer to mix, which is why you have 2 days to complete mixing in your tertiary tones. To begin mixing the tertiary hues, I'm going to be making yellow orange and then blue purple. Remember, when you make your yellow orange, only add a little bit of the red in because you don't want to make an orange. That red is very an overpowering color, so you don't want to add too much of it. I also recommend that you create 2 sections of yellow orange on your palette. That's going to help with mixing, so you'll see that in a second. But next I'm going to be making my blue purple. Whatever is the first color and the tertiary name, so like blue, purple, you want to be putting blue down first and have that be the majority of what you have, and then just add in a touch of the red to make it a little bit more purplish in color. Now I'm starting to mix a second pile of tertiary colors, so I can use these colors to then mix into my other tertiary colors that I've blended to create my tones. When you create a tone, the point of it is to just dilute that color's intensity. So we only want to add a little bit of the opposite tertiary to our main tertiary color that we're painting, so we're not creating a different color but just a tone. So when you add in that opposite color, only add in a little bit because we're just trying to get rid of the intensity. Make sure that your pigment is not watered down and that it's nice and thick. If it's too watered down, your tone is going to end up looking like a tint. To begin painting your section, make sure you grab clean water. And then you're going to be painting in water into the area that's supposed to be the tone. When you put in the water, you have to make sure that you're being neat. Do not, go over the edge, because wherever the water is going, that's where your pigment is going to go. So be as very precise as you can be. Make sure that the water does not puddle up. We just want a nice damp surface. After the paper has gotten nice and wet and it's damp, load the brush with pigment and then start stroking your brush from left to right and then right to left. As you pull down, that pigment is going to spread out in the water, creating a really nice transition of values from dark to light. While I'm also pulling down, I also lifted up the pressure of my brush to where it's barely touching the paper surface. So only a little bit of pigment was actually getting into that water in the bottom of that tone section. After you finish one section, you can move on like I'm doing here. Paint clean water once again into the area that's supposed to be a tone. Load up your brush again, and then make sure it's darker at the top and lighter on the bottom. So what I like to do is I like to add in that dark value everywhere on the top, and then once it's there, then I'll start stroking back and forth from the left to the right and right to the left to get that nice gradient of values in my tonal section. For these tones, I'm going to be grading you on your craftsmanship. So did you make sure you kept the water only painted in the section that should be the tone? Are your tones truly tones where they're not like a completely different color? They're just a slightly diluted version of the original hue. Your tone should show that gradation of values, being dark on top and light on the bottom, and they should be painted as gradients on wet paper. The key to making this painting look really good is having clean water before you do this step. Don't get lazy and just work with pigmented water. It's going to distort your pigment whenever you're painting in these tones. So keep it clean. I always like to have a couple of bowls that are all clean water at my table, so I don't have to keep getting up and going to the sink. So it might seem lazy, but it saves me a lot of time. And the key to get that nice gradient is by moving your brush from left to right and right to left. Once you get moved down to the bottom of that gradient, don't try to revisit sections to help with the blending. Just be okay with what you have. This is all about practice and perfection. So if your first, tonal triangle area does not show a gradient, then at least show me some improvement by the time you finish your painting your tone sections. So if you have a couple areas that aren't the greatest, like you're going to have time to tell me that to say like, hey, this is where I started. So grade me a little bit nicer in this area, but this is where I finished and look at my improvement. And that's what I'm going to be looking for is, did you show me improvement as you were painting in these tones as gradients on wet? You will have 2 days to paint your tertiary tones as gradients on wet paper. So if you have any questions while you're working on this, just shoot me a message on Schoology and I am more than happy to help.